You don't choose what you believe as a Christian. That's one of the biggest lies that the evangelical movement teaches. But if not that, what and how? Hi, I'm Jeremy. I'm a deep skeptic, also a pastor. See, what's often said in the evangelical church is we just believe the Bible, but that's not a thing you can just do, because what you've discovered most likely is that the Bible is full of all kinds of weird and crazy stuff. And what you've been taught is a very specific interpretation of the Bible. And the biggest revelation for most people who grew up in the evangelical movement is they realize that they have actually chosen to believe all kinds of things based on someone's random teaching. The person was teaching as if that was the only proper way, proper interpretation of the biblical text, but it's not. There is a huge range of teachings, and now that you've let go of the idea that you just have to believe the Bible, what do you do? Because the Bible is distinct from Christianity. It's separate from it. It is the sacred text associated with Christianity, but it's not the whole thing. The religion and the text are actually two distinct things. Because anytime you read the Bible, you're interpreting it. And anytime you apply it to the modern day, you're contextualizing something written to people millennia ago in a culture that is probably very different from yours, if not opposite of yours, to the modern time. So if you're not just accepting someone else's statement about the Bible as the thing that you absolutely have to believe, if you realize that you are now choosing your beliefs like you really always have been, how do you go about that? That might be the most difficult problem facing people who are trying to figure out what they believe as they have let go of evangelicalism and maybe of Christianity altogether. I find that as a Christian, it's helpful to really think of 4 sources of authority that you are blending together in order to figure out what it is that you're going to believe in the world about God. The first one, of course, is the sacred text. You have a sacred text. There are all kinds of books and writings within the Bible, and figuring out what it is that you believe about any specific passage or about the Bible itself is an important part of it. But it's not the only part, and that's what's really important. If you're confused about it, if you don't know, if it seems not right, if there's something, I don't know about that, you can let it go, and you can figure it out later because there's other places that you need to consult. The other thing that's helpful to consult is people who have thought about this before and have thought maybe more deeply about this than you. So that's like reading books of people who are dead, or even getting on TikTok and looking at somebody like Dan McClellan, who is a scholar of the Bible, or looking at someone like me, who's not a biblical scholar, but is a pastor and is focused on like helping people live out their faith in the world. By the way, that's an important difference, but that's another video. And then there's your own experience of life in the world. And this is something that has always been a part of how you form belief, whether or not you specifically say that that has been or not. But intentionally consulting that as a source of authority, like, what is my life? What is my experience? If I'm saying that I want to believe in a loving God, okay, so what is that? How do I navigate love in the real world? So your experience can be a source of authority and a check, but we'll talk about that in just a second. And then there's just logic, right? Your own brain, putting that all together, logically making sense of it, and knowing that logic isn't 100%. It's not perfect, and it changes as different sources of authority, as different pieces of data come in. And so saying like, this makes basic logical sense to me, or this over here makes sense. This over here makes sense. They don't make sense together, but I'm going to be okay with them not making sense together because I know that there's likely some other data point that might come in that unifies them, but this definitely feels true, and this definitely feels true. So logic and being able to hold two things in tension, but that sort of source, your brain considering it. And then we come back to experience, because it's all just got to check out. You've got to be able to live with this belief system and feel like you are doing good and being the person you want to be in the world, that this belief system is empowering you to be the best version of yourself in the world. That's really important. So all of that together, the sacred text, right, is important. Other people's thoughts, thinking, help, guidance is important. Your own logical mind, putting it all together and trusting logic while at the same time, an important piece of that logic being when you don't have all the data, if one thing is true and another thing is true, but they seem to be in conflict, that conflict might resolve later on, and so we can live with tension. And then experience, like my own experience of life is a source of authority in my belief system, as well as a check for my belief system. It says like, yeah, this checks out with my life. So that's really important. That's the way you do it. That's how you form beliefs in the absence of just mindlessly accepting what somebody believes about the Bible or is saying the Bible says, because it's all up for interpretation. The Bible is always a negotiated text when you're trying to read, interpret, and apply that to your life. It's not the only thing. And whenever somebody says that I just believe the Bible, just steer clear of them, because what they're saying is, I only believe this one specific version of an interpretation about the Bible, and that's just not intellectually accurate or honest.